Hello everybody and welcome back to Expert Examiner IELTS. My name is Glyn and in this video we're going to give some feedback on Kamil's speaking test. So let's dive right in. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Glyn. Would you please tell me your full name?
Nice to meet you. My name is Kamil. You can call me by my given name, Kamil.
Okay, thank you, Kamil. Now, in this first part of the test, I'm going to ask you some questions about yourself. What town or city do you live in?
Currently, I live in town Engels. It's
Cool. Well, currently, nice.
quite obscure place in the
Quite obscure. Yeah, I guess you could use obscure to talk about a place. Obscure means like something that's not very famous or popular. It's a little bit strange maybe to use it about a town, maybe, but I think it works. It's quite an obscure place. He missed the article, but it's quite obscure, fine.
central part of Russia. And I guess the only interesting fact is that was named for
Not named for, but it was named after.
the famous philosopher Friedrich Engels.
And do you like living in this place?
I would say that it has a great infrastructure,
Cool, I would say that, nice.
and I live nearby.
Maybe one thing I find about many candidates is they don't go into enough detail. When you tell me, oh, it has a great infrastructure, I need to know what you mean here because it's not enough, right? It has great infrastructure. Do you mean like the transportation infrastructure or what type of infrastructure do you mean?
By center, and I would say that I enjoy the local amenities. And
And again, right, I would say that I enjoy the local amenities. Absolutely fine. Candidates doing great. But again, instead of saying I enjoy the local amenities, activate your vocab. Tell me what you enjoy, right? Instead of I enjoy the local amenities, yeah, we have some, there's a great supermarket near my house where I like to go, or there's a fantastic shopping center where I go and hang out with my friends, or we have a lot of like restaurants, so I like to go and try different kinds of food. Tell me about specifically the amenities. I find very often candidates are often very general and I'd like specifics. And sometimes this can be a sign that maybe there isn't vocabulary, lexical resource there. But I don't think it's the case with this candidate.
quite place.
And does your town just notice a couple of times at the end of his answer, he just has a little mm-hmm. Don't end your answers with a I know it's probably just a nervous tick or it's just something that you do, but you don't need to you don't need to give that signal of okay, not a big problem. And receive a lot of tourists.
No, honestly, it's quite rare to see visitors
Cool. It's quite rare to see visitors. Great paraphrase.
in my town because it's, as I said before, it's quite
As I said before, I like this little discourse marker.
obscure place and unknown for many citizens in my country.
Cool, a little bit. I'm going to for many citizens in my country, I don't know if citizens is exactly the right word. Just people is fine here. Sometimes people overcomplicate their language. They feel like, oh, I can't use people because people is too basic. I need to use citizens. But it sounds so strange. Like, oh, it's quite an unknown place for citizens in my country. It's just not the way that we use the word citizens in English. And how has this city changed in recent times?
Oh, honestly, it's quite a difficult question.
So you've had honestly, I think 3 times now. So just be careful there. It's great that you have these little like discourse markers right at the beginning of the sentence, the beginning of an answer. Well, let me think. Honesty, to tell the truth, frankly speaking, I'm not a fan of frankly speaking. It's okay that you use some of this, what we call functional language, to prepare an idea, but just be careful that you're not overusing the same ones. I think we had honestly maybe 3 times already.
But I have noticed some changes in
Cool, I have noticed. Really nice natural use of present perfect here.
terms of infrastructure. For
In terms of infrastructure, can you give examples?
example, they have built new shops.
Cool. I love this use of they. They have built new shops. It's a way of avoiding the passive. You can just use they. Passive often sounds a bit formal, so some new shops have been built. Fine. They have built some new shops. Great. Awesome. Very natural.
Around my house, and also new residential buildings.
Not residential, but residential. Residential. Residential.
Mhm.
Let's talk about clothes. And again, right at the end, we get the just that little sign to say my turn has ended. Don't do it. Yeah. Now, do you like shopping for clothes?
No, I am not a person who pays attention to fashion
I'm the same.
or something like this. I prefer to ask my mother to buy
And notice the collocation, pay attention. I'm not the kind of person who gets that S, pays attention to fashion. I prefer to ask my mother. Grammar is very, very solid here.
some clothes or other goods. Mhm.
And how often do you get new clothes?
I guess maybe
Like the use of I guess, as he's thinking, I guess, maybe, very natural.
thrice in a year because
Twice a year. Not twice in a year, but twice a year.
of seasons changing, and it's quite essential
Not sure how I feel about this quite essential. Grammatically, it is accepted, quite with strong adjectives, quite essential, I suppose.
to change your outfit maybe once a year, and
It's not just about changing your outfit once a year, is it? I don't know. I don't know about change your outfit. Surely you change your outfit every day, don't you? like, uh,
my mother care for me.
and my mother care for me. That just sounds a bit strange at the end. Let's just listen. Sorry. And when
So to change your outfit maybe once a year, and my mother care for me.
my mother care for me. Again, we get this at the end. My mother care for me. I think he's trying to say my mother takes care of me, maybe. We have these, three confusing constructions in English. Look after, take care of, and care for. Now, look after and take care of are pretty much synonyms. Care for or care for somebody can be close, and care about something, that's different. So I think in the candidate's language, he's trying to use the Russian word zaботиться. Она обо мне заботится. I don't know. But zaботиться, yeah, takes care of or looks after. This is a very common mistake I hear from Russian speakers of English. And when was the last time when you had to wear formal clothes?
As far as I remember, I won them during my mother's
Fluency is breaking down a little bit here. We get a bit more hesitation.
birthday. Maybe it
My mother birthday, grammatically just falling down. My mother's birthday, that apostrophe S.
was 3 months ago.
And do you like dressing up in formal clothes?
Oh, honestly,
Again, we get another honestly.
they are quite inconvenient for me.
I don't know about it could be inconvenient. I think you mean uncomfortable here. I know, again, in Russian they have this word udobna, which means both comfortable and convenient. But for me, I don't know. Clothes being inconvenient. I don't know. It sounds strange. Clothes are uncomfortable sounds better.
Quite hard to wear them for a long time.
I think that's fair. Again, we get this at the end. So I won't mention this anymore, but I just want to bring your attention to this use of at the end of all of your answers. I won't mention it anymore because it's not worth wasting time, but that's one thing, one simple, easy thing that you can just remove. Will it change your score much? No, but might it change? Sometimes I know it shouldn't be the case, but sometimes it feels like there's you're trying to award a candidate a score, and let's say it's like fluency and coherence, and you're really not sure if it's 6 or 7 because there are parts of the test where it feels like a 6, and there are large parts of the test where it feels like a 7. And sometimes small things, it really shouldn't be this way. Examiners, in my examiner training, I was always taught, if in doubt, if you're really borderline, give the higher mark. But certainly there are some examiners that might approach it with, if it's really borderline, subconsciously, if there's something annoying about the candidate, they might choose to give the lower mark, right? If the candidate has opinions which are, I don't know, like sexist or racist or something like this, or if the candidate, I don't know, whatever it is that someone finds annoying, an examiner might, if you're borderline, they might think, I didn't, subconsciously, they might think, I didn't like this, at the end, and that might push them to the lower mark. So, very small chance that it will affect your score, but just as a very basic thing, remove that from the end of your answers. Now let's talk about art. And please keep in mind, this is only my advice, right? I'm not telling you you absolutely must do this. It's only my advice. You're free to do what you want. Do you enjoy visiting art galleries?
Honestly,
We get another honestly. I'm not going to mention this anymore, but hopefully, doing this test has now given you that it's raised your awareness of how often you use honestly. So just be careful.
not many art galleries in my city,
Cool. There are not many. I love this use of there is, there are. Cool.
so I wouldn't say that I'm particularly interested
Cool. Nice development.
in it. But when
So and but, all of these simple connectives. Good.
I have visited Moscow,
When I visited. With when we use past simple, not present perfect. Well, not always. But usually, if we're talking about the past, when I met them, when I visited this place, when I saw it, not when I have met it, when I have visited. I know a lot of students of English think, oh, but there is a result that's connected to the present. That rule that you learn about present perfect, that, oh, it's an action that happened in the past and has a result in the present, is such a terrible rule, and it is responsible for so much misunderstanding with students who want to learn grammar and want to learn tenses, and it results in this type of mistake. But simple thing, if you're talking about the past and you use when, use past simple, not present perfect.
I enjoyed some museum and art galleries because I am fascinated by history and it's kind of manifest.
It's kind of manifest. I don't know about that. It is kind of manifest. Sounds a bit strange.
uh, the
And
historical events.
and are you good at drawing or painting? So notice the question: are you good at drawing or painting? Are you good at? Do you have good skills at drawing or painting? Candidate misunderstands the question.
I am particularly mesmerized by some paintings.
And again, I don't know if it's because the candidate's trying to use the word mesmerized, if that made him misunderstand the question. To me, it seems a little bit obvious that he's trying to use. I'm mesmerized by paintings. Earlier on, he said I am fascinated by, and now I am mesmerized by. I don't think you need to worry about trying to use that vocab. I think your natural vocab is good enough. If you are going to say you're mesmerized by something, you should explain why, or you should explain what makes it mesmerizing.
Like um, drawn by artists of previous century and
Yeah, again, explaining. I mean, the question is, are you good at drawing or painting, right? So we're off topic there, but just a point in general. If you say that you're mesmerized by something or something is mesmerizing, it's better to explain what you find mesmerizing, right? So sentences like, this art is mesmerizing, it's better to say what I find mesmerizing about this art is, and then that forces you to use topic specific vocabulary. What I find mesmerizing about minimalist art is how it reflects on having a decluttered mind. Okay, a very complicated, sophisticated idea, and maybe even a pretentious one, but okay.
especially I enjoy minimalism style.
And so, yeah, the question is off topic. Will this hurt the candidate if he misunderstands one question and answers off topic? No. If it's just one question, I forget about it. I don't care about it. It's out of my mind. If it happens like 3, 4, or 5 times, then it becomes a problem. If it just happens once, did you study Porfig art at school.
Yep, they mandatory courses,
They mandatory. So these classes were mandatory, but mandatory, good adjective.
and the part of curriculum, but I would
Cool part of curriculum, really good topic specific language, very nice.
say that we were not interested in the subject.
Were not. So it just sounds a bit strange. If you use were not, like the full form, you should stress the not, right? We were not interested. We were not interested. If you use the short form, we weren't interested. But we were not interested sounds strange. We were not interested. We weren't interested or we were not interested. So the sentence stress is a little bit off there.
And honestly, I prefer to skip them.
Okay, thank you. All right, comments on part one. So let's go through it one by one. Fluency and coherence, generally good here. I think the candidate did develop his ideas well, used a nice range of like but and so, not just the connectives, but actually these cohesive functions, I guess, right? Contrast and purpose and result and reason. So he has a wide range of those. He is ready to speak at length. Sometimes maybe I'd like him to go into more detail, which can affect coherence, but also could affect vocab. I think in general his vocab is very, very strong. He has a lot of topic-specific language that he can use naturally. I didn't like the use of like fascinated or mesmerizing. I just felt like those two bits of language stood out as being unnecessarily like candidate just trying to activate that vocab. Yeah, thinking more about vocab than answering the question, but okay. Grammar, strong. There were a couple of mistakes, like they mandatory or something like this, or she care about me. A couple of very small mistakes, but in general, I think the candidate's range was decent. We had, gerunds and infinitives and things like this. We had present perfect. We had this use of they built some shops. So like instead of using the passive, using this impersonal they, all of that's good stuff. And in terms of accuracy, generally very, very accurate. So all of that's good. Pronunciation is something that people maybe I should talk about fluency a little bit more too. There are noticeable pauses in the candidate's speech, sometimes mid-sentence, which, part one, we don't want so much of that, especially in part one. We expect it more in part three, but a little bit of pausing and hesitation. The candidate is definitely what we would call a careful speaker. So very often, the goal of all language learners everywhere, two goals: fluency, accuracy. And not always, but typically we find that students who are very, very fluent or speakers who are very, very fluent tend to be less accurate. And students who are very, very accurate tend to be less fluent. Now, this candidate, he is a careful speaker. The focus is more on accuracy. There's more mindful choosing of each kind of bit of language. The good part about this is that you can get better scores in vocab and grammar because you're more careful with your selections. The downside of it, of course, is pronunciation. And I think the most noticeable thing from, a non-expert might be the pronunciation sounds maybe a little bit mechanical. There are certainly some letters like s, and he has a few problems with this. Intonation is a bit off. I mean, actually, I think intonation is okay. Sentence stress is sometimes a bit off, but there's not really much of this connected speech. But I think it's easy enough to understand the candidate. There aren't many, big problems with pronunciation that make it difficult to understand him. It's just he doesn't really use many of the more advanced features of pronunciation. Somebody in the comments section said that the candidate deserves 4.5 for this performance. I don't know if this was a genuine opinion or not, but I think sometimes someone might listen to that type of pronunciation and think, oh, that guy doesn't speak English well. Candidate is definitely much stronger than a 4.5. So yeah, Anyway, let's keep going with part two. The task for the candidate is to describe a celebration or event that he attended. Of course, fluency is the big thing that we focus on in part two. Do we have like a natural beginning, middle, and end? Is there a clear sense of progression? Can the candidate speak comfortably, at ease for the full 2 minutes? Can he stay on topic without going too far off topic? All of that good stuff. But let's see how the candidate does in this part. Preparation time. To remind you, you will have between 1 and 2 minutes to give your talk, and I will let you know when the time is up. When the time is up, can you start speaking now, please?
Mhm. So I'm gonna talk about my the last birthday of my mother.
The birthday of my mother sounds a bit strange. My mother's birthday. I'm going to talk about my mother's last birthday.
I guess it was quite it was
I guess it was quite, yeah, a bit of hesitation.
quite
Repetition.
important event for me because it was her 50th, and
Love this. It was her 50th. Very nice. Very natural.
we prepared for the day for a long time.
Maybe, if we were looking for the highest level of grammar here, we had been preparing for this for a long time. I think the candidate knows this past perfect continuous. If he sat and thought about it, I think he could find it. But, we had been preparing for a long time is better than we prepared for a long time. But okay, we prepared for a long time gets the message across.
So, for example, we ordered.
A lot of people get obsessed with these tenses in English. They think like, oh, when do we use past simple or when do we use past perfect continuous? And it's like, in this example, we prepared for it for a long time. It's perfectly acceptable. According to a grammar book, we had been preparing is better. But is it fair to say it's a mistake to say we prepared for it for a long time? It depends who you ask. Certainly, with more modern approaches to linguistics, many people would say, no, it's absolutely fine, absolutely acceptable to say we prepared for it for a long time.
Cafe.
So don't get too worried about, finding the exact tense all the time. Very often, choosing the correct tense or being a master of which tense to choose just means that you're a really good English teacher, or you're not even a very good English teacher, but English teachers and English students are the only ones who care about getting the exact tense right all the time. Everyone else in the real world, they don't even know what a tense is. No idea at all. When you say like present perfect continuous, no idea at all.
And restaurant nearby, so we had no problems with locations, and we invited a lot of guests. Mostly they were our relatives, and
He does have some friendly intonation here. The intonation isn't always the most natural, but I do like that it's quite friendly. We invited some guests. It's nice.
her co-workers. And
Not co-workers, but co-workers. So again, just word stress here. Co-workers instead of co-workers. Is it a big problem? No. I understand what you mean.
I was quite fascinated by the way my mother organized this event.
Okay, again, I was quite fascinated. Again, candidates trying to activate that word fascinated. I think he said fascinated, which is a common pronunciation pattern mistake. Fascinated, not fascinated, but fascinated. Yeah, and again, instead of I was quite fascinated by the way my mother organized the event, give details. What I found fascinating about how my mother organized the event was da 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 da.
Honestly, I was quite I didn't
Notice this overuse of quite now. We've had quite is quite a popular word, but we could use other words like so or very or yeah, really or something like this. So be careful with the overusage of quite.
know the program of this
Just feels like maybe we're not getting a lot of progress. I know it doesn't help, right, that I'm pausing all the time. Pausing it breaks up that fluency. But I think if you go back and watch just the original video of the speaking test, it just feels like we're stagnating a little bit in part two.
event because I wasn't particularly interested, but it's fine.
Again, we get that particularly interested, which I liked the first couple of times, but particularly is a little bit overused. Now, I still think his vocab is strong, but you just want to be careful with how often you repeat words like particularly and um, quite, maybe quite is fine to have repeated use of. And this word honestly, you repeat a lot too.
And I know she spent a lot of money to organize
So with spend, she spent a lot of money organizing, or she spent a lot of money on the party. So very often pattern spend money on something or spend money doing something.
her birthday because it was special event. And I remember that there were a lot of delicious and nutritious food, mostly
Cool, delicious and nutritious food. Nice.
from Kazakh cuisine, but also there were some dishes from Russian
So Kazakh cuisine, dishes, again, very topic specific language, good stuff.
and maybe American food. Uh,
Wow, what a feast. Kazakh food, Russian food, and American food, all living in harmony. Mhm.
Also, moreover, she organized
Also is fine. You don't need to change also for moreover here. It's okay.
some
As a human, not as an examiner or maybe as a teacher, I don't like moreover. I hate it. Really don't like it.
competitive events.
There's nothing wrong. You can use moreover. It's fine. But I just hate it. Sorry. Let's move back a little bit.
Competitive events.
Okay, competitive event feels a bit unnatural. Do you mean games, sports, competitions? Competitive events just sounds a bit strange for a party.
With prizes, and I guess we have a great time
We had a great time, but okay, it's just one slip.
together.
Okay, thank you. I think the candidate here has noticed this mistake because after the test, I asked him and he said, I used present simple and I should have used past simple. So you can see the pain on the candidate's face here. All right, so you've been talking about these, and there's no need to worry about it. It's a kind of mistake everyone can make. Everyone can make this little stupid mistake. I can make that mistake. My family and friends can make that mistake from time to time. Making one small mistake isn't a problem. The important thing is how you react to it. How quickly can you forget about it and move on, right? I've mentioned this before, but I play chess. I used to play chess more often. And the thing that always kills you in chess is not the mistake that you make. The thing that kills you in chess is that when you make a mistake, you're so busy thinking, I can't believe I did that. Why did I do that? If only I'd played this, this was the better move. Why did I do that? That was so stupid. The best players in chess are the ones that are able to. I mean, the best players in chess don't make those type of mistakes. But chess, life, English. How quickly can you just put it out of your mind and accept? Yes, I'm not perfect. Yes, I made a mistake, but okay, that's gone now. I can't go back in time. Can I continue? So really, don't freak out. I shouldn't use negative imperatives. Be calm if you make a mistake. It is perfectly okay to make a couple of simple mistakes. Everybody makes a couple of simple mistakes. Even Band 9 users of English make a couple of simple mistakes. Forget about it, move on. Celebration that you attended.
Mhm.
Comments on part 3, I thought it was okay. A lot of vocab was decent again, topic specific language. Fluency was a little bit weaker perhaps, and it didn't feel it, like I mentioned, felt like there was a little bit of a stagnation. I don't feel maybe like there was a clear beginning, middle, and end that like flowed nicely, but okay. Candidate managed to speak for 2 minutes, all good. Pronunciation the same, grammar decent, a couple of slips, but yeah, about the same as part 1. Let's get on to part 3. We are on 29 minutes. Your mother's birthday. Let's talk about events and celebrations in more detail now. How do celebrations bring people together?
Mm. In my opinion, it's
Cool, nice functional language, in my opinion.
quite important element in
Okay, it's quite an important element in, but all of this is like generic language. How do events or celebrations bring people together?
society because it's a reason I guess people are dependent on dates and
People are dependent on dates, fine, but you're kind of complicating ideas. How do events bring people together is the question. We want to get some idea about, how those events get people speaking, hanging out together.
uh, they inclined to commemorate and give attention
Commemorate, great topic specific language.
to special occasions and days and
Yeah, but we're still not quite hitting exactly the detail of like how does it bring them together. So a nice answer might be, well, there's obviously the physical thing. If it's someone's birthday party, you get a bunch of people in the same room. But there's obviously that mental thing too, or the psychological thing, where once you're physically in that same space and you see people you haven't seen for a long time, it can remind you that you should contact these people more. For example, like if it's birthday parties, right? How often do you see your cousins, your aunts, and your uncles? Not often, but if you have to meet for some type of birthday party, it can just sometimes remind you that these people exist. And then going forward, that can help you to value the importance of keeping in touch with them more often. We have that idea there of bringing people together.
I guess it's the main reason why we organize them and attend.
Mhm. And have the ways that people celebrate big events like New Year changed over time?
From economic prospect, I would say that
Not prospect, but perspective.
it has become
And I know this word perspektivny in Russian has a different meaning to perspective. That sounds more like prospect. So there's a bit of confusion, but yeah, from an economic perspective.
harder to arrange such events because
Cool, but it's so have the way that we celebrate big events like New Year changed? Details. In the past, people used to, but nowadays we. In the past, people didn't, but nowadays we. Details of how those changes have happened is what we're looking for.
of problems in the economy as
It's just saying it's more difficult to organize or to plan. Fine, but really dig into how people celebrate. What did people do in the past that we don't do now? What do we do now that people in the past didn't do?
it's in my opinion the salaries went down
The salaries have gone down, but we're moving off topic, I guess. I mean, it's still connected to his answer,
and it affects how people celebrate.
but it's not enough, right? It affects how people celebrate. Um, Examples: what, they can't buy enough, they can't buy as many presents as they used to, or they can't splash out and spend a bunch of money on like a load of food like they used to, or what?
These events. Mhm.
What are some of the differences then? So how do people celebrate these events differently? So cool, I'm trying to really get those details.
Um, I guess it depends on the traditions.
It does, but let's not go too far. Again, let's just try to jump right into the answer.
Maybe familial, like many families have they special dates and special elements in terms of their history, and they might add some personal elements to their celebrations. So, for example, one some people might prefer to visit other cities.
Cool, that's a clear example, right? Finally, after all of this talk, we finally get to, some people visit other cities, which might be seen as a different way of celebrating.
But others prefer to stay indoor and celebrate special occasions. Mm. within the house.
Yeah, so the flow of the speech just breaks down. Candidate doesn't quite know how to end the answer there.
Now, in many cultures,
Now, of course, the candidate is noticeably struggling a bit more in part 3 than he did in parts 1 and part 2. That's normal.
all over the world, celebrating birthdays is considered normal and fun, but there are some people who don't like celebrating their birthday. Why do you think some people don't like celebrating their birthday?
So I invented this question on the spot, and I just felt like that would be a question that would force the candidate to give details, because I just feel like we aren't quite getting enough specific, direct answers to questions.
I guess it depends on personal.
And again, we get this, it depends on, which is absolutely fine sometimes, but when you're, and obviously the candidate doesn't know this, but I'm trying to get away from all of this, it depends on stuff, and I'm trying to just get some specific details. The it depends on is very general, right? Like, why do some people buy cars? Oh, it depends on the person, because there are lots of different people in the world, and they all have some different motivations for buying cars. Yeah, but details. Why do some people buy cars? Well, firstly, I think people use them as their main form of transport. Some people really don't like public transport because it's unreliable and it's inconvenient. But if you have your own car, then you can use this car to kind of drive to work every day, or you can take your kids to school. There are other people that kind of like going on these long road trips, right? So, instead of going on a holiday where they stay at a hotel, they just drive somewhere in their car. That's specific detail. So more specifics would be nice.
Qualities as such attentions varies from
Varies. So variety, but vary. The verb is to vary, not vary. So that's an example of a mispronunciation that would reasonably cause confusion. Vary. The pronunciation vary. It varies.
person to person, as some don't give attention to such dates, as they
But give attention. Pay attention, maybe.
have no personal meaning to such.
And again, I don't feel like, they have no personal meaning. Fine. But I want, just a couple of different ideas about why some people don't like celebrating their birthday. For some people, it could be a reminder that they're getting older, and a lot of people don't want to get older. Other people are kind of more introverted and they don't like to be the center of attention, and they might feel uncomfortable when so many people are telling them, like, happy birthday. There's also maybe an expectation to be happy on your birthday, and we can't always just turn it on. And when other people are super excited when they say happy birthday, sometimes you can feel a little bit like, I don't know, broken. Those are examples. Those are some reasons why people might not like celebrating their birthday. I don't want to answer all of these questions for you. I just want to give some examples of, what a direct answer looks like.
People, and also maybe some people have some sentiment against the birthday.
Oh, they have some sentiment against their birthday. I don't quite know what that means. Sorry.
Maybe they consider it as an important event, like just ordinary day.
And do you think it's important to celebrate a birthday?
In my opinion, it's
Again, we get this slight overuse of "in my opinion." I think it's the third time we've had it. It's okay, I think, in my opinion, but a bit more variety might be nice.
quite important date, as it allows you to look back
Cool. It allows you to look back. Cool. Nice grammar. Nice vocab.
and see your progress, and
That's also idiomatic, right? To look back. That's an example of idiomatic language.
maybe put your objective. Most people prefer to put goals maybe in
Not put goals, but set goals.
New Year, but I guess birthday is a suitable date to plan for something for your progress.
And how important is it
Cool. I think that answer was reasonable.
to include younger generations in traditional celebrations?
Difficult question. How important is it to involve younger generations in traditional celebrations? Save the most difficult question for last.
I guess in such way, people inherit
Beautiful. Inherit. Very nice.
the legacy of the ancestor.
They inherit the legacy of their ancestors. Nice.
And for me, it's quite important because it allows to retain national identity and
Cool. To retain national identity. Finishing with some very strong vocab.
the diversity. And honestly, it's quite sad when your generation refuse some traditions and refuse to celebrate uh, special occasions that have been celebrated by their parents or grandparents. Mhm.
Okay, thank you. That is the end of the test.
All right, so let's get into some scores for this candidate's performance. I think it's relatively easy to score. I'm going to give fluency and coherence 6. The reason I felt like in part 1 and part 2, you're absolutely fine. So there was a bit of noticeable difficulty in part 3, especially with answers not always directly answering questions. I think in the first, in general, you make good use of connectives and other discourse markers. So the thing that stops you from getting a higher mark here is probably, two things. Sometimes you have some mid-sentence hesitations, like because you are a careful speaker, you have these mid-sentence interruptions. I should put this in there. There are also noticeable mid-sentence hesitations. Cool. So the two things that stop you from getting the 7 here, not answering all of the questions quite directly enough, not going into detail quite enough, and also those mid-sentence hesitations. Now, answering questions directly, that's quite an easy skill to fix. The mid-sentence hesitations with fluency, that's an incredibly difficult thing to fix, especially if you're a careful speaker. But certainly you can think about answering questions more directly, and it might push you a little bit higher. Lexical resource, I'm going to give 7 for this. So I think there were a few noticeable slips with incorrect word usage and collocation. However, you demonstrated a very wide range of vocab which allowed you to answer questions on a range of topics. So it didn't matter if you were talking about the birthday celebration, or if you were talking about food, or if you were talking about art. You found a lot of topic-specific vocabulary to talk about that. All of that is good stuff. You could have been a bit more precise, like put goals, set goals, give attention, pay attention, that type of stuff. There are some of those mistakes, you might not expect from a Band 8 user, but I think you have enough lexical resource for a 7. Grammar is going to be I'm right between the 6 and the 7 on the grammar. And I'm gonna it's about the same. I know what the 6, but I'm gonna go with 7. The reason I'm giving 7 is because I'm right in the middle between 6 and the 7 on the grammar, and I tend to mark positively, or I try to mark positively. You demonstrated very good control of simple structures, and you also attempted some more complex structures. Cool. There were a few opportunities, maybe a few opportunities for more complex grammar. Like I mentioned that we had been preparing for, right? There were just a couple of opportunities like, oh, we could have said that instead of that. But that's fine. There were a few opportunities for more complex grammar, perhaps, and some minor slips. But there weren't really any mistakes that caused confusion. So, if a regular person listened to you, they wouldn't be confused by your grammar. They wouldn't say, I didn't quite understand the meaning of what you said because of your grammar. I don't think there were any cases of this, actually. And I think you do have enough variety for the 7, just about. I don't think you will get to 8 for grammar. I know the test is coming up soon, so I don't think you should worry about grammar. One thing I will say is, don't worry if you make a couple of small mistakes. It's absolutely fine. Don't let it disturb or hinder or mishach the rest of your test. And pronunciation, I think, is a 6. I think it's probably your weakest part. I still think it's good enough for a 6. So in general, it's easy enough to understand what you're saying without too much effort. So I don't need to I don't need to pay attention closely and try to work out what you're saying. Everything you say is understandable. There were some errors, both with word stress and sentence stress. I like your intonation in general, but as a careful speaker, you have a tendency, let's just say you don't use much connected speech. So, the difference between in general, it's easy enough to understand versus in general, it is easy enough to understand. There's a difference between connected and disconnected speech, and most of your speech is disconnected, and I don't think this is something that you can improve short term. So if I focus on areas of improvement, I'm going to mention something small first. Don't end all of your answers with try to avoid that. Be careful with repetition of particularly, honestly, maybe quite, maybe in my opinion. It's okay to repeat them a couple of times. Really don't worry about repeating those things a couple of times, but just, be careful with how much you use them, because it is noticeable that you rely on these bits of language quite often. Really, areas of improvement. It's okay to make a few slips, errors. Keep positive body language. Do you get scores for body language? No, but still, it might make you feel better if you have positive body language. If you're not like, oh, I can't believe I said that. Oh no, don't do this hands on your face, closing your eyes. It just, it always looks bad. The same thing in boxing. You don't get marks for positive body language, but notice fighters at the end of the fight, they always want to show that they won, and that's to try to, get in the judge's mind. I know it's a difficult thing to stay confident. And one final thing, make sure that your answers directly answer the questions. And be specific. This is the key thing. Be specific about details. How has the way that people celebrate the new year changed since in the last 50 years? In the past, I think it was much more of a family event. People got together and they stayed at home and, they ate delicious food. But nowadays, I think it's become, an event that you can maybe celebrate with your friends. There are still some similarities, like people still exchange gifts and things like this, and we sing the same songs. But I just think, going from that family holiday to a friends type of holiday is the most noticeable difference for me. That's a specific example of a change. So you have to, it can be great. I really think you can maybe push your fluency and coherence to a 7 with more direct answers, with more specific details. Yeah, so for me, the overall score here is 6.5, higher than a few people suggested in the comments. Again, I think some people, they hear the intonation or they see maybe not the most confident candidate and they think, okay, it's a low score. Candidate is at upper intermediate level. Candidate is very close to advanced level, and certainly vocabulary is advanced. I think maybe there is enough grammar that's advanced too. what would I expect from the candidate? Maybe I would be surprised if he gets an overall 7, because I think the pronunciation score will be 6, and so that makes it really, 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 really difficult then to get the 7. If you want to get the 7, but your pronunciation is 6, then you will need to find a score of 8 somewhere else. And I don't think there's anything, fluency and coherence, it's not going to be an 8. Vocab potentially could be an 8. Grammar, I don't think you'll get an 8 for that. So for me, I think 6.5 is probably a realistic goal. If you got a 7, I wouldn't be like, sometimes I hear candidate scores and I think like, wow, they gave that candidate this score? No way. I wouldn't have this reaction if this candidate got a 7. I don't think he'll get lower than a 6. I don't think he'll get higher than a 7. For me, 6.5. Yeah, cool. So hope you enjoyed this breakdown of this candidate's performance. If you would like me to do this for your speaking, if you'd like your own free practice speaking test with feedback, then contact me in the Telegram channel. A link to this Telegram channel is given in the description below. I also check IELTS writing tasks, so if that's something that's interesting, again, contact me on this Telegram channel. But for now, I will leave it there. Have a wonderful evening and see you all very soon. Bye-bye.